marketing stories, cool marketing tales, unique original stories, brought to you by Epic Conversions.com.
Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Cam, and I want to welcome you to my new show. It's called Cool Marketing Stories, and this is a show where I want to interview some of my favorite marketers and some, marketers out there and online business people out there who I just think are really cool, and not necessarily get them to tell me their secrets or anything like that, but just kind of, talk to me, tell me some stories about, I want to hear some war stories, so to speak, and that's kind of what this show's about. It's about cool marketing stories, exactly how the title says. And to kick this thing off, I got to sit down and talk to one of my favorite marketers, a guy who's been doing it for 17 plus years, a guy whose teachings that I followed and have made a lot of money from following his teachings. So I was really honored to be able to sit down and talk to him. But this is one Sean Mize. So I was super excited to be able to sit down and talk with him. And I thought he had some great things to share. So with that being said, I want to remind everybody, the interview you're about to watch between me and Sean Mize, I actually broke this down. I productized it, so I broke it down into smaller lessons, easier to consume video lessons, as well as like a remastered kind of audio version if you want to listen to the interview, as well as like a transcription of the whole thing. So you can have that absolutely free. I'll put a link to it in the description. Pretty cool. I think that's probably the best way to listen to the interview. However, the whole interview is right here on YouTube for you. So enjoy. All right. Peace now. And a big thanks to Sean Mize for doing it for me. What is up, everybody? I got Sean Mize here, the one, the only, legendary. Sean, thanks for hanging out with me today, man. I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate being here as well. This is going to be a lot of fun. I feel honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm going to jump right into it. I know I kind of talked your ear off a little bit before we even hit the record button, so I'm going to try to be respectful of your time and just jump in, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'll be honest with you, they're selfish questions. I'm honored to be hanging out with you, man. So I'm going to ask you questions that I would like to just know. So let me just start it up. Can you, for people who might not know who you are, can you give us a little bit of your origin story, how you got started into this like online world a little bit?
Well, cool. Yeah. Wow. Talk about really going back in time. It's funny because normally when I'm asked that question, I go back to 2006, which is where I actually started online. But I just had a flash, I don't know, 45 seconds ago when I was kind of thinking about the idea that I think my origin almost goes back to when I was about 16 years old. Like I think in the back of my mind, I've always just been an entrepreneur to some degree, spotting opportunities, looking for opportunities. And I remember when I was in high school, I was involved in some of the clubs. I was Spanish club and German club and a couple of the other clubs in school. And we used to sell candy bars as like a fundraising thing for the different clubs. And, we do like Spanish club for 2 weeks and we do German club for 2 weeks. And people over the course of like 6 weeks, I'd carry around this candy bag, and in every class I was passing candy bars all over the classes. I was like the candy bar dealer, and people were literally like on the other side of the class sending dollar bills my way, and I was sending candy bars when the teacher was writing on the screen. I don't know, maybe 6 weeks that went on, and all of the fundraising deals were over, and people were asking me where are the candy bars. And this was before I could drive. I literally got to where I'd walk to Kmart at night and I'd buy these big bags of candy bars for 20, be 20 cents a bar or whatever. And then I'd sell them for whatever they were selling for, $1. I think that was, had some little entrepreneurial things that happened before that. But for me, that was spotting an opportunity where I was able to give value to somebody else. And so we fast forward to 2006 when I got started online. In my mind, I wanted to be able to work online because I didn't want to work offline anymore. I had just gotten out of, I had done contract work for years, whether it was sales or whether it was different things. And, I'd work hard, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, maybe for a period of time and make good money. But then when the gig was up, the gig was up. And I got to where I enjoyed having that time off when the gig was up. But of course, I wasn't making any money during those periods of time. And for me, getting online was this opportunity to be able to make money in a way that I could still travel. We'd be able to go to the beach, be able to go to the mountains. And that's really what online has been able to do for me, which is cool. So the very first thing that I felt like, I felt like it was almost like a call, was to create, my very first book was Time Management for Christians. It was just something that meant something for me. I'd just gotten out of college. I'd had to manage my time. I worked full-time or almost full-time with my own business while I was in college. And so I wrote that. Took me a month to write the ebook. A family member built the website. So 2 months later, we launched it. It was $15.95. And I think I made about $500 my first month with that ebook. And at the time, the lens that I evaluated it through was, I can't live on this. Like, this is lunch money. So I literally shelved that project, spent the next 9 months studying what works online. And then once I'd kind of studied what works online, I launched the current business that I have now. And long story short, I launched it without having any idea what I was going to sell. I launched it with the pure idea of getting people into my world, putting them on an email list, emailing them daily to build a relationship, ask them what they wanted. And pretty much the last 18 years of my life has been writing books, recording trainings, creating coaching trainings to meet whatever the needs are of those people that come onto my list, both then and now. So yeah, that full time period. That's how I got started, Cam.
That's awesome, man. Candy bars. That's amazing. I love that. It's funny, man, because like I started like in 2011, and God, now I look at the gray on my beard and I look at these old YouTube videos and I think, holy crap, I'm getting old. Like, and it feels like a long time, and I'm starting to feel like I've seen all this and I've seen it all and I've done it all, and I got the t-shirt and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, for you, it must be double that because you've been doing it longer than I have. So maximum respect. That is awesome. And that's a really cool story. Okay, so cool. Let me ask you this question. It's about kind of like success. And this is kind of a weird question, but I know like how I define success has changed over the years. And I guess I just wonder like how you define success, and if there was kind of an experience or a moment or whatever that kind of like really helped you kind of like change the way you saw it or whatever. Only the easy questions here, Sean.
Only easy questions. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, we're just kind of talking about, I mean, my goal with starting an online business was so that I could have the freedom to be able to travel and not, it wasn't that I don't want to work. I don't mind working. I enjoy working, but I wanted to have that flexibility and the freedom. And so my initial bar was, let's have that flexibility and the freedom. And I got that flexibility and the freedom. Obviously, the money went along with that. I think that for me, at that time, and probably the first decade or more, it wasn't so much about the money as it was the freedom that comes with having the money. Now, we can't separate the money, because without the money, we can't have the freedom. I mean, unless we just live on an island and then live off the coconuts on the island, then we can have the freedom, right? But, you know, in our current world that we live in, generally speaking, in order to have that freedom, we have to have the money. And so the money comes with that. I think what's happened in the last few years for me is that success looks a lot more to me like having the freedom to have the personal relationships, to deepen family relationships, to spend time with people that are getting older in our lives, to spend, you know, to recognize that life isn't just about the vacations. It's not just about the money. It's not just about even changing lives online. You know, it's not just about all of those career-oriented things, but it really is, at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's about the people that God put us here to be with, that we're here for relationship. You know, we have to make the money to not just earn the income, but to be able to finance that relationship and to have the roof over our head and all of those types of things. But, you know, I think that when it really comes down to it, it's really about relationships and people. And, you know, even our relationship with God, that doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think that in so much of a sense, it's there so we can have a relationship with each other. And success is becoming more and more of that for me. I can't say that that's all that it is right now. I think that, you know, I think, Cam, that part of it is that the idea of success is becoming more and more of a holistic idea over time, that it's not measured. I think sometimes we go through a period of time where success is measured in money, or success is measured in freedom, or success is measured in relationships. I think that over time it becomes measured more holistically, that there's a measure of money, and there's a measure of freedom, and there's a measure of satisfaction, and there's a measure of giving back. There's a measure of relationship. And that success becomes, for me, it's become more of a balance between all of those things.
That's righteous, man. That makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because, like, you telling that story, like, you can almost see the evolution of what success is, like the further you go, you know. So, yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So, this is funny in a weird way, not in a haha way, but this is funny. A few years ago, we had this COVID outbreak thing that happened, and for some reason, I don't know how it affected everybody else. I know a lot of my peers, they seem to think their businesses was doing better than ever, and it was just blowing up, and everything was amazing, which that's cool. I get that. For me, business was fine. It was doing good. A lot of new people were coming online trying to figure things out. So yeah, there was a lot of people wanting to learn things. For some reason, like, I was starting to have a disconnect because all the stuff that was going on with you know, the pandemic and everything, and like, I was kind of facing this challenge of whatever, like, how do I fit into this equation of the world, this business? What am I doing? Like, what actually is happening? Right? There was just all these different questions I started asking myself. It was really weird, man. And I guess my question for you is, like, can you recall something like that's happened to you over your long career where you've kind of had a challenge, some kind of situation you were able to overcome? Maybe you learned some lessons from along the way.
For 18 years, lots of challenges. It's hard to identify one.
Sure.
Right? And I think that, one thing, this isn't an answer to your question, but I think one thing that a lot of times people look at when they look at somebody like you've been in the business for a long time, they look at somebody like me, or they look at somebody else, that, the only thing they ever see is the success. That, they only see the YouTube video. They only see the screenshots. They only see the end result, and they only see a snippet in time. Like, if you meet somebody and they've been around for 15 years, you only see that snippet in time. But I think for all of us, we experience these ups and downs, and it's not like don't think that in most cases it's like up and up and up and up and up and then down and then up. I think there's all these different layers that are happening at the very same time. Um, one of the things that comes with money when you when you have more money coming in, now you have to pay more people to help you deliver whatever it is that you're doing. And then once you have to pay more people to help you deliver whatever it is that you're doing, now you have to make more money to be able to take care of them. And so then with inflation, you have to make more. So you have to go out and get more clients. So you bring more clients in, you're making more, but now you have to fulfill more. And so it's kind of like, it really is. It's a more thing, and that same thing happens in our personal life. You go from eating $2 hamburgers to $8 hamburgers, and it becomes a way of life, and it's difficult to go backwards. And so it's like in everything that we do, our outsourcing, our personal life, our equipment. The public expects our equipment's going to get better over time. Our environments are going to get better. Our utilization of our time, everything is always expected to get better and better and better and better. What happens is when things get better and better and better and better, all it takes is a wrinkle to make the whole thing fall apart. So you might have 4 people doing work for you. One of them quits, and you realize they were carrying the whole load, and everything falls apart. Okay? Or you have income happening. One piece of income comes away. Now we can't pay people. Now we can't buy our $8 hamburgers anymore. We have to cut back somewhere else. And so it becomes kind of a snowballing thing. I think that for me, though, the thing for me was that, people, my concept of creating product has almost always been create what people want and deliver it to them. Okay, rather than dictating what it's going to be. And in fact, the few product launches where I have dictated what it's going to be, they almost always flop. Okay, so when people pull on me and they say, can you create this? And I'll put it out there. And so over the years, I'm creating what people want. I'm creating what people want. It's always based on this current reality and this current place. But over time, because of everything we just talked about, more and more people pulling on that, more and more people getting training. And I went through a period of time where I wasn't getting positive feedback about what I was doing. So I was creating and creating and creating and giving and giving and giving. They're paying for it in their money. So we make the logical assumption that if they're paying for it, they must be happy with it. But deep inside, there's this inner dissatisfaction from not knowing. It's the craziest thing, from not knowing if the thing created is being used. And I know this is like totally a first world problem, right? But it really weighed on me. I want to say it weighs on everybody. I assume it weighs on people because when I talk with a lot of successful people, they may use different words, but they've gone through kind of that same as existentialist thing. You get to the place where initially the money is good and that's cool and the satisfaction is good, but over time, the feeling of accomplishment in not just my life, but in somebody else's life really weighs. And so, at one point, I closed down a coaching program I'd had for 14 years, 11 months as a result of frankly, I want to call it pain. Like I was having intense pain inside of myself from not feeling like I was fulfilling well. And really over the course of the next couple of years, that created a lot of challenges for me. Folks literally criticized me for shutting it down. I don't want to necessarily attacking my character, but I think in several cases that's where it really went. Like I had unfairly taken something away from them. That was difficult for me to deal with. And then one of the things that I tried to do was to put it back into place in reaction to those people. It was premature. I didn't feel good about it. Those people didn't come back anyway, so I wasn't able to repair any of that damage. But I think what it's done for me, so now we look at and it's been several years. It's taken several years to get to this place. I'm getting to the place where I recognize that being in this business is not just about fulfilling everybody else's need, but it's also in satisfaction of what we're able to do. So I think it'd be kind of like a cook or a chef. Yes, part of their job is to cook the food for the person that's on the other end. But I think the chef and the cook should get a personal satisfaction out of actually doing it. That it's not just a one-sided transaction that is sealed by the financial exchange. I pay the $8 for the hamburger, but that the person preparing it can actually have enjoyment in delivering it. Just like I believe a farmer should have enjoyment in the work that he's doing. Somebody that runs a sewing machine should get satisfaction out of doing that. We should have satisfaction in relationships. It's not just about selfish satisfaction, but it's also not just about fulfilling their needs, but that both sides. And so again, this is one of those areas where I think that I'm still in flux, where I'm still growing into that place. And I think that change is necessary, and it's a growing period. And after 18 years, I think that there's still a lot of growing in it. And I look into the future, if I'm still in this business in 28 years or, in 30, take another 12 years and say it's been 30 years, what will be the growth challenges there? Because I don't think we ever get to a place where we just plateau, where we just we just stay the same.
Yeah, school's always in session.
School's always in session. Yep.
There's no graduation, Sean. There is no graduation.
That's right.
All right, man. Listen, I appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these kind of like a little bit, I don't know what you call it, esoteric, maybe more in-depth questions, not necessarily so practical. I'll try to bring it back to something a little bit practical. I've consumed a lot of your trainings. I've really gotten a lot out of them. I was telling you that before we jumped on this recording. I guess this is a practical question. Can you share some insights when it comes to like how you create a new product or course? Is there like a specific process or method? And I know you kind of alluded to that when you were answering the other question, when you were talking about you try to focus on what other people want. I guess I just wonder if you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit, maybe give us any insights or, kind of lessons on course creation.
Well, sure. This is fun. This is one of the things that I enjoy teaching. So the first thing for me is always finding out what do people really want. Okay. And so I'll do that through surveys. What is it? What is your challenge? What is your goal? What is your challenge? What are you stuck on? And I'll try to ask as many questions as possible on a personal level to find out what those issues really are. Okay. But the second step that we have to go through is not just answering those questions, because people don't know what they don't know. Okay. So they say, well, I don't know how to do these particular things. But it doesn't mean that's all that they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So I know, hopefully, if I'm creating something about something that I know from beginning to end, I know what the 10 steps are, the 20 steps. I may not know what their challenges are. So I find out what their challenges are. When I create the final product, though, I've got to create it such that I give them the framework to do what's necessary. And in addition to that, make sure that solves all of the problems that they're looking for. Okay, so that's the first thing, is just mapping out everything that needs to be taught, not just what I believe they need for a framework, but then what they believe that they're stuck with. And then we get into something practical. I mean, I just literally write it all out. Step 1, step 2. I'm a real linear person, so I'll just map it all out. And the next step really is to say, okay, what's the best way to teach this? So some things are better off to draw it on a board. Some of them are better off to be spoken. Some of them are better off, you can write something out. And so I'll try to make each part work in such a way that it'll meet that particular need. And then we just do whatever we need to do, whether it's to record or print or whatever. In real life, I will almost always take something that I'm going to teach and create a live class out of it. After all of these years, I no longer care to record in the basement. I remember my first few training programs, like literally probably hundreds of hours I recorded in my home office. I would just literally create an outline. I turn the recorder on, and I would just walk around the office and teach for hours. I can't do that anymore. I go out of my brain. I want to have some interaction just like this. And so generally speaking, if I teach, it's going to be in a classroom environment. And so then what I'll normally do is I'll sell a workshop or a class so that I can have truly interested people if they put money in. People who pay attention. I want people on the other side of the screen that are paying attention. And then I'll teach it, and then we'll take those recordings and load them up into a members area. That's, very general, simplistic overview. I'm sure I have a course out there that's 5 or 10 hours worth of the same material. That's the 5-minute version.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I think one cool thing that you do is you have a great way of kind of simplify. You take fairly complicated things, and this idea of launching a product, man, there can be a lot of moving parts to it. There can be several moving parts to it. We can break it down to like create, package, release. But like we can take those 3 steps and break them down into like 30 steps a piece. It can be complicated. I think you have a talent for taking fairly complicated subjects and breaking them down for people in a way that makes them feel like they can do it, which I think that is awesome, man. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so speaking of product launching and putting out products and putting out courses and things of this nature, have you ever had a program that kind of like exceeded your expectations and then you had to kind of figure out why it exceeded your expectations? Can you share a little bit of a story like that for us?
Program that just exceeded expectations.
Only the easy questions here, Sean. Only the easy questions here.
Only easy questions.
Only the easy questions.
Yeah, only the easy questions, Cam. I tell you what, I don't want to say something I regret saying because my memory doesn't. Honestly, Cam, I can't think of a program that ever exceeded my expectations. And I want to temper that by saying I don't believe it's because, I put out bad trainings. I think that mentally I go into everything as it's going to be just this absolutely amazing win. Like every 100 students are going to come to class and they're all going to get an A. They're all going to do 100% of the homework. I am going to show up 100% for every single interaction. We're going to meet for 13 weeks for an hour. I'm going to be in a good mood every week. I'm going to be at my very best focally, mentally. I'm going to have total focus every one of those 13 hours. All the students are going to show up. The internet's always going to be perfect. And so I think in reality I know that in reality that never happens. And so I think that from that perspective, no, I don't know that I've ever had a program that exceeded my expectations.
That's amazing.
But here's the thing. I think, Cam, that's part of the curse of this business. We talked about earlier, this is deep stuff. We talked about earlier this idea that I got into it for the freedom and the money to make the freedom happen. And I achieved the freedom and I achieved the money. And I don't want to say that it's not all it's cracked up to be. I would say I'm sure that there's a level at which it becomes what's cracked up to be. And yet you hear billionaires talk about the fact that it's never enough, right? And even the freedom, I think the freedom is never enough, because the more freedom that you have now, you begin to enter into a place of boredom. I think what's interesting about this business is that we're never going to be able to solve all the world's problems. We're never going to be able to teach 100%. We're not God, but only God is God, And yet our expectation is that we'll deliver at the very best. Our expectation is that if somebody invests money, they're going to lean in at the very best. And none of those things is realistic from their perspective or from mine. And I think it's sort of like relationships. Like, I'm never going to be the perfect friend. And, in every relation, no relationship is ever perfect. So if we evaluate every relationship against what's not perfect, we're never going to be satisfied. And it's kind of like, I think in life, we have to get to this place. Boy, we're really getting philosophical here, but we have to get to this place where I don't necessarily say it's satisfaction with how things are, but that our feeling of accomplishment doesn't just come from the fact that everything that we do is perfect. Yeah.
That's a really good answer, man. Yeah, that's awesome. That really makes a lot of sense. I'm funny because like I'm more of a realist. I guess I think I need to lean into some of that optimism a little bit more. I'm more of a realist, like where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna launch this product. I anticipate it's gonna sell about this many. And like, yeah, very easily my expectations could be exceeded or not be met at all. So that's really cool hearing from a different perspective. I love that. That's amazing. So I guess right in the back of that question, what would you tell a newbie who's just getting started on business? What kind of advice would you give them? Someone who's just getting started fresh off the boat, as they would say, Sean.
Wow. Cam, that's a tough one because I think everybody starts at a different level. And so it really depends on what the business is. I'm going to speak to two different newbies. Okay. I'm going to speak to the person, there's a culture out there. Much as I came to the internet, I did have no idea. Actually, I'm in a mixed boat because I had an idea of what I wanted to do online, but I also knew that I wanted to be online to make me the money that I could have this freedom. A lot of people are coming online right now thinking that the internet is going to magically make them some full-time income because there are millions of people that make a full-time income online, whether they sell e-commerce things, or they create coaching, or they do some service or whatever. So there are millions of people that make a really good living online. What the industry doesn't tell us about is the 95% of people that spend way more learning how to make a full-time living than they ever make. That's the shadow part of this industry, is that unfortunately most people never make it. We only see the ones that do, and since there's millions of us that do, it feels very commonplace. And even for people like you and me that have made it, you can't unknow what you've made. I mean, you could take everything away from me and everything away from you except for our minds, put us in a room with a computer and an internet connection to some kind of social group, and in 30 days we'd have a new tribe and new buyers of something. Like we'd be able to do it. Can we easily implant that in somebody else? I don't think so. There's something experiential about that. So for the person that's coming online that has no idea what they're going to do and they're going to sell, my advice to them would be back up just a little bit and really think about, if you could do anything, what would that be? And that we're not just looking for something to make money with, because the odds of you actually finding something, I don't want to discourage anybody, but most people fail, unfortunately. That's just the truth. Not to say that anybody couldn't win, but most people fail. And I think it's just like you look at professional football. Could anybody, assuming you're physically fit, right? I mean, could anybody be a professional football player? Well, in some theoretical sense, yes. If you spent 10 hours a day doing push-ups and going to the coaching and working really hard and all of that, in theory, could anybody make it to become a professional football player? Yeah, I think to a big degree, theoretically. But in reality, 99.95% of us are never going to make it to that level at anything. The internet's no different. So I don't feel like I'm being negative. Okay. So now if you take the flip side of a newbie, they're coming in and they say, you know what, I've got a skill that I can help people with. I'm a fitness expert, or I'm a speaking expert, or I'm an expert at something. And they're starting out as a newbie. I think that my biggest advice to them would be, boy, this would probably be different any given day, is find somebody that's doing what you want to do, follow them, mirror them, apprentice them, buy all their training, code every one of their classes, like become their shadow for a full year, and then grow into whatever it is that they're doing. Like, don't try to figure it out on your own. And unfortunately, both of those paths don't feel good to entrepreneurs like me and you probably. We all want to just go out there and break things and make things and do things our own way. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's certainly not a guaranteed path to success. So, maybe I feel like I'm rambling a little bit because unfortunately, I do not believe anymore that there's a clear path to success. And so that would be the thing that I would leave with folks is don't fall victim to the idea that there is just some magical clear path to success, that turning on a computer, buying a program, working really hard for 5 years, none of that is a guarantee of success online. And that to some degree, becoming successful is probably three different things: the blessing and guidance from God, one, secondarily, having a process, and then third, some element of coincidence and luck and hard work and charisma that all comes together to make you into a person that can fit into that success.
That's a great answer, Sean. And one thing that I really respect about you is that you lean into and you make no secret about your faith. You make no secret about your Christian faith. And I see a lot of people who do kind of like shy away from talking about religion. They don't want to put that out there for whatever reason. But I really respect that about you, man. I mean, you make no bones about it. This is part of what has been helped me achieve success. I think that's really cool, and it's very honest. I guess I wanted to ask you, I noticed you're leaning into the school platform lately as an opportunity. Could you speak on that a little bit as an opportunity and what you think of it?
Sure. I mean, if it's okay with you, I want to go back to the faith for just a second.
Yeah, for sure.
My faith's obviously important to me, but I think it would be actually dishonest for me not to bring up my faith. And here's why. Because I truly believe that for me personally, I couldn't have done what I've done the last 18 years without my faith. So without God's direction, I couldn't have done it. So if I were to represent to you that I have done this if I followed a 7-step process, one of those steps was my faith. If I leave that one out, it's just as if I left out the step of building an email list. I wouldn't be being honest about what the 7 steps are. And so for me, in telling that, it's actually one of the steps. I'm not saying it does or does not have to be the steps for somebody else, but for me, it's actually one of the steps. So, and that wasn't necessarily the case when I first started talking about my faith. I felt like I felt for different reasons why I should, but now I'm at the place where my faith was so important to me being successful that if I leave it out, I think I'd be dishonest. School platform. So the thing is about this industry, I remember when I got started online 18 years ago, it was so much easier to start online than it is now. From a technological standpoint, in theory, it was harder because I remember my first squeeze page was an executable file that you could only run it on a non-Mac computer, and it would spit out an HTML file. And then you had to take the HTML file and FTP it to the web and then connect it with autoresponder. And some people listening to me don't even know what all of that means, but we had to do all that technical stuff in order to have a website. And so from today's perspective, you don't have to have all of that. And so it feels like it was more difficult back then, but it was actually much easier because yes, I had to go through the techno curve of learning how to do that. But once I had it, I was in total control and there was only one way to do things. Today, there's 100 different pieces of software for somebody to think about putting their courses on, and every one of them is not the best. So you could never choose the best software. There is no best software. There might be one that's fastest. There might be one that's easiest. There might be one that is 100 different things, but you can't have them all. And you have to just choose, right? So, for example, I use Kajabi and have for several years as like my primary course area. Okay. I pay them a lot of money every single month. I post like 50 or 60 of my courses there. It is just the easiest drag and drop, move it around. It just works so amazing. It's one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive on the market. It works really, really, really well for that one thing. It doesn't do community well. It doesn't do learning curve well. Like it would take you like 3 weeks to learn how to actually use it well. And you probably should go get some one-on-one consulting to help you do it. Okay. But it's the best. There's really no community out there that does community as well as school does. School does community really, really, really well. And because they do it really well, and because that's what they built it for, they can charge for it. And they can charge for it really well. And there's lots of communities out there that are cheap and free that don't do community quite as well. And they therefore can't charge what school does. The disadvantage with school is that their course area is not it's not flexible at all. It is what it is. Now, it's pretty good for what it is, but you can't just move lessons around and things like that. So like if I compare the user friendliness, the flexibility to Kajabi, it doesn't compare. What school does really well, obviously, is communities. But what school does really well is someone can literally pay their fee, and in about 7 minutes, they can be 100% up and running. Like they may not have many posts populated, but their community is built. They don't have to cook a plugin in. They don't have to this. 7 minutes, it's up. The classroom is up. All they've got to do is upload a video. So for somebody that's starting from absolute scratch, that doesn't have preconceived notions about how courses should operate or how communities should operate or how billing should operate, it's about the easiest flip of a switch around. It's not the cheapest solution. So if somebody's looking for the cheapest solution, they might go somewhere else. And, for course area, et cetera, it's not necessarily perfect. It's not going to be right for everybody. I think that's what we have to get, is that people have different things that they want out of their software. If you want more flexibility, you'd go somewhere else. If you want something that gives you more flexibility with courses, you go somewhere else. But for just a general package for somebody just coming online that doesn't have the background and experience that you and I do, Cam, I think it's a really nice little business in a box. Let me fix that. It's not. Sorry. It's not exactly a business. It's not a business in a box. It's the house that the business goes in, right? Somebody could flip it. It's not a business in a box. You gotta make your own community and make your own lessons and all that. So didn't mean to cut you off, but wanted to correct my faux pas there with the words.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the house that the business goes in, but it's almost like like this house that came together really easily, instead of like you having to figure out how to build your own house like from scratch. Can you share your school group with people? Because I know you have a free school group that I've really enjoyed the last few weeks. I think it's awesome. Would you mind sharing that with people? Well, I can put a link to it, I guess, under this video. So
yeah, you could put a link to our school group. So full disclosure, we may not continue running a free school group. Social's not my thing and never really has been. I've tried it probably 15 times because people want it and I want to be social. I'm kind of like the teenager that wants to be able to be social with everybody, but then when I actually get in the room, I'm really uncomfortable. So don't know what the future of the free looks like. We actually have 2 coaching programs and possibly a third that are being run on paid school groups now. And I find that container works a lot better for me because it's much more focused on the actual training rather than just the social. So I don't know what that future is going to look like. Like we were kind of talking about, after 18 years, so much goes through flux. And in terms of community, I'm still personally in flux. Here's the thing. I'll give you this. Here's the thing. A dream world for me would be a community where hundreds or thousands of people lovingly and willingly interact with each other all of the time. What happens in reality with communities is that most of the time when someone joins a community for about 14 days, they're like all in. And then once their needs are no longer being met, they leave. And so that happens. I mean, it's kind of the same thing in life, right? People get into relationships, and then when it's not happy, they leave. They get into churches, and when it's not happy, they leave. They get in online communities, and when it's not happy, they leave. And just as we were kind of talking about earlier, my dissatisfaction with not always knowing that people are getting value out of my training, there's an internal dissatisfaction of knowing that people, not everybody is getting satisfaction out of that community experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. And I know that's some of the reason why I ended up leaving Facebook, among other things. But yeah, okay, so cool. I really appreciate that answer. And I guess what I wanted to ask you, because I'm not perfect, is can you think of any question that I should have asked you that I did not ask you?
No, these have just been amazing questions. I don't know what the right questions are. If I had to leave one piece of advice with everybody, that would be, in some ideal world, you will find someone to follow and learn all the ropes from. In reality, at the end of the day, you've got to forge your own path. Like, it's still a wild, wild west, in that you've got to forge your own path. You've got to find out what makes other people happy, because that's what they'll buy. But you also have to find out what makes you happy, because if you burn out, then you won't be able to help the people even if they want to buy. So there's a balance between you being happy as the chef and people being happy with what you create. And then obviously it has to sell for something in order to grease the wheels, so that you can be a chef and pay for the eggs that go into the omelet for the consumers to buy. So it's a huge ecosystem. But the one big piece of advice would probably be, you have to find your own way. Hire coaches to help you, find guides to help you, training to help you. But at the end of the day, it's your show, it's your game. Between you and God and everybody around you, it is your own path, though.
That's astute. That's righteous. I appreciate you, Sean. Thanks so much. Where can people find you at, man?
Exceedingly.io. Exceedingly.io.
And I'll put links to all that in the
that's our
description.
home spot. Yep.
That's the home spot. Exceedingly.io, everybody. Exceedingly.io. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate you, man.
Cam, thank you for having me. This has been an amazing pleasure.
Cool marketing stories. Cool marketing tales. Unique original stories brought to you by Epic. Conversions.com